There we go, man. That's it. We're live.
Nice. That was very slick. That was very nicely done. I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool video. A friend of mine, Olly, from a company called Rad Season, has been helping me out loads with setting this all up. So big shout out to him. He's got his own podcast, and basically when I told him I was interested in setting up one, he put his hand up and said, like, here you go. I'll basically show you all the stuff that I've done wrong. And well, hey, here we are, first time. Thanks for coming on, man.
Nice. Thanks for having me. Congratulations for podcast number 1. I feel honored and like you may be slightly misguided in choosing me, but I'll do my best to make it interesting for sure.
No, cool. I mean, the idea is just, well, this is it really, to have chats with people like yourself, interesting people, people that have done our trips, share their stories. Like, I often don't get the chance to really see, well, sometimes, step back from what a participant or like participant's journey is like on some of our trips. So I figured this would be a really cool opportunity to kind of listen to those stories and see what it's like from the other side. And then, yes, where it goes. Hopefully it's not too bad.
No, it's been a long time since I've really sort of recounted some of those stories and experiences too. So I'm looking forward to bringing some up. We should also make a disclaimer that, like, you haven't paid me to appear, and I did pay my way on all of the trips I've been on, because I think everything I say is going to be so overwhelmingly positive that you don't want people to think I'm like a plant or anything.
A paid interview.
Yeah. A stooge. This is all genuine. It's all real. It's real life shit.
Good. Thanks for the disclaimer. I should have probably done it myself. No, awesome. And you're in Oz, yeah? I mean, I know you're in Oz, but how long have you been there now?
Yeah, basically 10 years, yeah. So moved to Melbourne about 10 years ago. I think it was 2011. My partner is from New Zealand, and we met in London when I was at uni. We were both working at a pub. Her visa ran out. I kind of wrapped up uni and like pretty quickly made tracks over this side of the world. And yeah, we didn't really know what it was going to be when we first got here. We were both just looking forward to something new. And 10 years later, we're still here. We got two kids, 2 little girls.
I was going to ask you about that. Anyway, what has it been? Like, obviously, Australia, New Zealand, and a few other countries have taken like a completely different path to most of Europe, certainly America at some stages. But what's it been like overall, like over there? How are things?
Yeah, I mean, now they're mostly normal. Things are open, and we can go and do stuff, go to the shops, go to the pubs, all that type of thing. When it first hit, it was pretty, I guess, similar to elsewhere in the world. We weren't sure how bad it was going to get, all that type of thing. And then, the first lockdown came and went, and we thought we were through it, and then we had that second lockdown. Yeah, I mean, it's been much like other areas of the world, pretty bad lockdowns, and they've just managed to keep on top of it over here with, we had a few cases just a few weeks ago, and we went into a snapped 5-day lockdown. Can't leave the house more than an hour, can't go more than 5 kilometers from your house.
Yeah.
Everything's shut except basically childcare centers and like essential services. So yeah, it's been, challenging, but yeah.
And was that pretty heavily policed? Was it like, if they say lockdown, would they police it? Like if they saw you outside?
Yeah, there were fines. I mean, yeah, like there were fines. Like in the news, you'd see that every day they'd find, a few hundred people or whatever it was for breaking rules. Like masks are mandatory. People were having kind of illegal gatherings that they weren't supposed to have and stuff. So there was definitely some of that out there. So it did feel like it was being. You didn't feel like you could just go and do stuff. It really felt like everybody was kind of adhering to things more or less.
Yeah.
And I think in Australia, population-wise, because things are so much more spread out here, and the population is so much smaller than like the States or the UK, or plenty of other countries in the world. It's easier to manage.
Yeah.
In that regard. Also, they shut international borders right at the beginning, which meant that none of this virus could come in from overseas, in theory. So that probably played a big part in it too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've obviously been following that myself because I think you do know that I'm moving to Oz for a year from around August time, and that's a bit that I'm a little bit worried about actually. Like, how do you see? I mean, I'm not worried about going, but I'm obviously worried about getting out again. What do you like? What's the current roadmap for, or is there even one? Like, because I think, as far as I'm aware, you're not allowed to travel right now. Like, it's illegal.
Yeah, you're not allowed. Like the borders are shut, basically. So I think if you've got special circumstances, like if I had a sick family member in the UK, I mean, I can leave actually because I'm a British citizen. The trouble is, I wouldn't be able to get back in.
Okay.
And obviously with family here, that's kind of off the menu. So I think officially they've sort of said, assume international travel is going to be off the cards for the rest of this year. I would imagine that once the vaccine gets pretty widely circulated and there's a bit more, real life testing of the kind of vaccine passport stuff, things might change, and then they might having those conversations because, tourism and travel is such a massive part of the economy. I just think we've come this far and we've done so much to just open things up now would be a bit daft. So I do understand it. It's hard because there's so many livelihoods. For me it sucks. All my family are in the UK and I haven't been able to see them. I haven't met like Marnie, our youngest daughter, yet. So there's lots of personal stuff that make it difficult, but I do kind of get it in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, but what about so do you think that it will just turn out to be like a longer term, once there's a vaccine policy in Australia, like a full on structured policy in place, they'll vaccinate everybody and then slowly open up the borders? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, well, I think the general gist was that I got from the news the other week was that I think that we're supposed to be mostly vaccinated by October. There's been a couple of things about vaccine shortages, which may push it out to sort of a little bit later in the year or early next year. But I think it's like, let's get people vaccinated, and then once they know that's rolling, then they'll think about what's next. Because compared to other countries, we have like no immunity either, more or less. Like UK, because it's kind of gone around so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Herd immunity stuff, whereas we're incredibly susceptible because nobody's really had it. I mean, people have had it, but barely any people in the grand scheme of things. So. It's weird. It's a strange feeling, kind of knowing you're shut in. It's something we've all had to get pretty used to. Doesn't matter who you are, we've all experienced it. But just biding our time. Waiting for things to kick back in.
I hope they can. Well, let's see if hopefully that doesn't kind of just roll into like an indefinite forced closure of borders that just carries on for the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, let's just hope that doesn't happen. And I mean, that like you've obviously said the personal stuff, but I mean, you're also into travel writing as well. So and I'm sure a lot of I'm only guessing here, but travel is a big part of your life and your working life. I mean, what are you doing at the moment, work-wise?
Yes, I mean, so when everything kicked off back in, I mean, it was basically this time last year where things really kind of hit the fan. We lost adventure.com. We lost funding for it, so many areas in the tourism and travel business. Just all the funding got pulled, all the money stopped coming in, and so lost adventure.com, which was quite a kind of big part of my working life and my income. So I had to sort of pretty quickly find something to fill that. And luckily, I do a lot of like travel writing is one thing I do, but I kind of I wear a few hats. Like I do a lot of different types of writing. So I do a lot of kind of commercial copywriting, and I do different types of kind of editorial stuff. So it's not all travel. So I was able to pick up some more work doing kind of some commercial brandy advertising copywriting after Adventure.com. So I've been doing that for most of the year, and it kind of spurred me because I've been freelance and Adventure.com has been part-time for me for like the last kind of 5 years. So everything that's gone on kind of spurred me to consolidate it all, and I've started a little communications company, which I will sort of be launching properly in the next few weeks, months. But so it kind of it encouraged me to consolidate some of that work and do more of that side of things. But now just a few weeks ago, since Australia's sort of been opening up and stuff, and the state borders have been opening, we've managed to do some partnered content on Adventure.com and bring that back. So we've got some stuff in Tasmania, which has been really cool. And we've got a couple other things in the pipeline too. So Adventure.com is back in a slightly different way to it was before. And there's still kind of, question marks over some things in the future. But so that's kind of what I'm doing now is back to more Adventure.com stuff, even though it's all domestic.
Yeah, because I think I said somewhere along the line that you're one of the founding editors. Is that right? Are you one of the founding editors of Adventure.com?
Yeah, well, I mean, Adventure.com's existed in a couple of different iterations. So, like, me and my colleague Mira, we were there from the beginning of this current version of it, because it's owned by a company called Intrepid Travel, which I know you know, and they had the domain and they tried one thing and it didn't quite work, so now they've pivoted it to make it this publication. So I think we've been going for about 4 years now, and growing the audience, and been winning quite a few kind of travel writing awards and media awards and stuff in the UK, US, and Australia. So it's been going good. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be thinking about travel again.
Hey,
I said it's nice to be kind of thinking and writing and talking about travel again.
About travel, yeah. How did you overall like? I know I can't even remember the first time I'd actually seen any of your writing, but how did you? It might have been through Adventure.com itself, but how did you get into travel writing? I know that you were like, I don't know, an expert copywriter before, but how did you get into writing itself? And I mean, you've done journalism stuff as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I studied journalism and creative writing at university in Kingston, just outside London, and I did that because English was just like the only, just sort of. I mean, I was good at things, but English just came sort of naturally, so it kind of felt like a logical step to go and do journalism. But it just happened. I enjoyed it. Then I moved to Melbourne, and I was just struggling. I couldn't find any graduate jobs. I applied to all the newspapers and magazines. At this time, 10 years ago, all of the newspapers and magazines were shutting down on their ass or just weren't hiring or whatever. So, worked in a cafe for, I think, my first year and a bit in Melbourne, and then was just applying for any kind of, sort of gave up on the journalism, magazine, newspaper side, and was just applying for lots of brand copywriting jobs, anything that was writing, really. And eventually a job ad came up for Intrepid Travel, which again, like, travel company founded in Melbourne. Didn't really know what they did, didn't really understand like what the deal was of the company, but I knew that it sounded really cool, and so I applied for that and went in and was lucky I got the job. And was doing sort of brochure copywriting for a couple of years, so, writing travel brochures really. So that was like my first sort of, it's not really travel writing because we were basically, Googling everything about destinations and looking everything up from research that already existed. Did that for a while, met some really great people, and Intrepid was a great company to work for. Yeah. And eventually basically decided that I wanted to bring in some of the more magazine and storytelling and journalism stuff into this job I had. So sort of made some inroads and sort of pitched to the business that I set up some blogs for some of the brands and start doing storytelling that way. And that just kind of took off, and it all went really well. And that was sort of what I did there for a few years. And so, that's kind of where the travel writing stuff started. And then after that, I left Intrepid and I went away and did my own thing for a little bit. And then Adventure.com came on the radar a couple of years later. And knowing, having had a good relationship with Intrepid, and having had a bit of success with writing that kind of content for them, they came to me along with a couple of other editors at the time, and we kind of came on as a team to start doing adventure.com. So yeah, that's kind of it. It was a bit of a roundabout way, but yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah, cool. I mean, what and those so when you were working for Intrepid, the kind of assignments and stuff, did you used to get sent on some of their awesome trips and like around the world, and then to write about them from like first person, and
yeah, towards the end, it wasn't. I think back in the heyday, like early days of Intrepid, that was very common, and then by the time we were there, it wasn't super common, but in the last year or two I was there, they started getting into that a lot more. I remember the first one I did, I went to Turkey, and it was because I was already in UK visiting family anyway, and they were like, "While you're there, why don't you hop on this Turkey trip?"
Yeah.
And it was the first sort of Intrepid trip I'd done. It was a Gecko's Adventures trip, actually.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. Gecko's no longer exists, but that was a great brand, great company.
Is Gecko's gone? Is it?
Gecko's is gone, yeah. But yeah, that was my first experience with them, and that was just awesome. Like, I was there with a photographer, and it was a big like content gathering trip. So we did the full Intrepid experience, and then came back and had to write hundreds of blogs and articles for it, which was great. I mean, I think it wasn't 100, it was like 15 or 20 or something like that. And then from there, I think I kind of saw the value in doing some of that. And they sent a couple of other people away as well, which was really cool. And then from there, there's a few more trips came up. Got to go to the Galapagos Islands, which was really cool. Did the Trans-Mongolian Railway right before I left the company.
Was that one of the trips that they do, the Trans-Mongolian?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So it was a Trans-Mongolian, but you just do it with a guide and a few, like a small group of people. And yeah, it was great. It was like, it was an awesome time. I kind of coming all the way to Melbourne and not really knowing where I was going to be or what I wanted to be. Well, I knew what I wanted to be doing, but I just couldn't get into it. And then to find a company like Intrepid and to be brought into that was really awesome.
Yeah, I think you've actually jogged my memory there, because I seem to remember this was obviously going on at a time when you actually came on the Lanka Challenge, our Sri Lankan tuk-tuk adventure. So because I seem to remember having various conversations with you about that. How did you actually hear about the Lanka Challenge and our Sri Lankan tuk-tuk adventure? Because that's always a question I'm always interested to know. Like, obviously we do our own marketing and advertising and stuff, but back then we certainly didn't do very much, and it was mainly word of mouth. Would it been word of mouth that you'd heard about it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was probably, from memory, it was probably my brother that sort of sent it to me and suggested it's something we might do. I remember, like, I definitely was aware of, like, the rickshaw run and the Mongol rally and all that kind of thing. And however I found it, I think it was probably Matt that sent it to me. I just remember seeing it and thinking, like, yeah, it looks really cool, but feeling like, oh, it's like other people. I'm not the kind of person that would be any good at something like that. And then I can't really remember. I just think it must have been me and my brother egging one another on to why don't we do it? And they're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I didn't have any money at the time because I was like, a junior sort of copywriter. So he spotted me a bit of the cash, which I paid him back for sort of 5 years later. But yeah, I think it must have come from Matt, and I can't remember the exact process, but because I think that was even before I'd done any Intrepid trips or anything. Like, it's quite interesting because even though I had spent a couple of years flying backwards and forwards between Australia and England and Australia and New Zealand and England to be with my partner, I hadn't really done much travel outside of that. I'd go on holiday with my parents to France once a year when I was a kid, and that was sort of it. So even though I travelled a long way,
your first furore into kind of a bit of adventure was to drive a tuk-tuk across Sri Lanka. Nice.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I didn't really think anything. I hadn't been to any sort of non-Western countries really, or like developing countries or whatever. And so that was it. It was let's get in a tuk-tuk and drive and see what happens. And I think a big part of it for me as well was you know, Matt, my brother, is obviously, you know, what is he? I don't know, 10 years older than me, more or less.
Yeah.
And so us being separated on other sides of the world, it just felt like a really cool opportunity to get together and do something that we would, you know, kind of have to remember for the rest of our lives. Good little
Yeah.
bonding sessions. So that definitely played a big part of it as well.
Well, I'm not biased at all, but like in my view, driving a tuk-tuk, there's no better way in certainly in places where there's such like a tuk-tuk or rickshaw culture. There's no better way to kind of dive straight into to that country, and just the tuk-tuks themselves. I mean, I'm a bit of a tuk-tuk fanatic for some reason. I've kind of just grown into that somehow. I wonder why.
You'd have to be, yeah.
Yeah, I've got mine. I've got one out here in London. So
do you drive? Can you drive it around? It's not road legal, is it?
It is totally road legal. Yeah, there's actually some friends of mine run a company called Tuk Tuk UK, and Rob imports. I think he's certainly one of the larger importers of tuk-tuks, and he basically does an all-in-one service where he makes them completely road legal, and to, you know, the UK MOT standards, and then people buy them here. And obviously they are, you know, there's such a tiny amount of rickshaws that people just, you know, like, they love them. And obviously in London there's such a large kind of South Asian population as well. You know, first generation, second generation, that actually it turns a serious amount of heads, and people love it. And it kind of, I guess, for those kind of people, it reminds them a bit of home and streets, like, you know, streets in wherever, in India, in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, because rickshaws are so much part of those places. But then also, like, the kids, you know, I was always used to driving in like Sri Lanka and India, and there it was more of, you thought the shock value came because you're just a foreigner driving a vehicle, but actually here the kids love the vehicles just as much as the kids love the vehicles over there. And the main reason is, I think, I kind of draw my own conclusion, is that it's because they've never ever seen a vehicle like it, you know. So kids are with their parents, and they're just blown away. You know, they don't know these vehicles exist, so they see it and they are just the reactions are so good.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good fun. And yeah, I've got lots of plans to hopefully go further afield from here and go across Europe. I think you might have seen we started an Italian adventure last year on Tuk.
My brother went on it, didn't he? Did my brother go on the first one?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, we actually, the first, so we managed to run two in the middle of, like, I guess, if you've seen any of, I hate going back to COVID because I didn't really want to talk about it, but you obviously see the charts, and it was like Europe had a bit of a peak in kind of April, May, and then it lulled down over the summer, where a lot of those, you know, European countries and even the UK opened up a lot. And we managed to get a couple of trips in there. And a lot of the teams that joined were all actually past participants. They'd either done India or Sri Lanka. So that was really cool that they'd come back to do that. Yeah, your brother was one of them. And yeah, back to rickshaw stories. Like, I guess I had a little bit of trepidation on the Italian front because I was, you know, we do them in the Italian version of a tuk-tuk, which is called an ape, a Piaggio made them. And I was, you know, I thought there might not be the same kind of immediate love affair that the local population has with the tuk-tuks, but boy, was I wrong. I mean, people just love the vehicles just as much there. You know, you're driving through these like old medieval kind of Roman villages where, you know, the locals, you know, they just love the vehicles just as much as anybody. And what's not to love?
There's something about them. They just like elicit joy. It's, I don't know. Like, what is this strange little three-wheeled thing? It's not a car. It's not a bike. Like, what is it? I don't know, but it's wicked.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always say that it's kind of like, because I obviously ride motorbikes as well, and like they're great fun, and I love the kind of the speed and the power from motorbikes. But the tuk-tuks kind of give you a little bit more security because you've got that little cover. Not that it will protect you much at all, but you've got that kind of protection. But you're way slower than a motorbike, you know. So you
way slower.
Way slower. So you're still open though. You know, you get the sights, so you get the smells, you can really kind of interact with your surroundings, and slow enough to be able to kind of like, if you see something, you can just stop, pull over, jump out. Very accessible. So yeah, what were your, like, it's probably going back a while now, but what were your memories of, like, I don't know, first time driving a tuk-tuk, first time in Sri Lanka? Like, what were your memories of that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like I said, it was the first time I'd really been to a Western country, so there was probably a bit of overwhelm. I remember just being excited though, like excited to be there, and like meeting my brother at the hotel. Probably hadn't seen him for a year or two. It was great, and I always love that, when you're first meeting everybody else that's going to be on the trip, and that kind of thing is really fun. And then like we were both like just shitting ourselves about actually driving the things. You had like the test track around the hotel. What was it called? The
first hotel. I
Yeah.
think then we still go to a hotel called Tamarind Tree, which is kind of right next to.
I was going to say the Cinnamon Tree, but yeah, the Tamarind Tree. Yeah, a lovely little spot. And you had this good like track that went around the outside of it. So we had a day, I think, there was a day before we set off where we practiced, and everybody else seemed to be taking to it really well and was like, doing okay. And me and Matt were just struggling big time. And I was like, fuck, this is horrible. Like, I don't really want to be doing this. And then it turns out that our whatever you call it, I don't know, accelerator, I suppose. The leather grip was loose every time we tried to turn it. Or maybe it was the gears, I can't remember. One of them was loose. Every time we tried to turn it, it would just slip back, which means that nothing worked. And then somebody I'd never driven anything like that, so I had no idea that anything was wrong. But somebody pointed that out to us, fixed it, and then from there, we figured it out. And we were still shitting ourselves, but at least that first like hiccup was like, under control.
I think it's funny you say that. I mean, I think having spoken to lots of people, when I meet people from all over and we catch up again after years or whatever, those are some of the like the main memories is that first day of like absolute carnage, shitting yourself when you're like, I've actually got to do this. What the hell have I signed up for? And the first time you kind of make eye contact with your vehicle, you're like, shit, I'm actually driving this thing 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah, I mean the whole way over there, because I'm about 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", so the entire time I was just terrified that I wasn't actually going to fit. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but I wanted to do this thing. So to get there, and it was very tight, and my knees were, I mean, some of the roads we went on are incredibly bumpy, as you know, and like I smashed my knees quite badly. But I could still fit in the thing more or less, so that was a relief. But yeah, that first experience. I mean, for us, because once we met the group and got a feel for like who else was on the trip, we quickly realised that there were two Australian guys that were both in the Navy, and we were like, we'll just follow them. We'll just do whatever they do. They had a big blow-up kangaroo on top of their tuk-tuk. So I think from day one, our plan was just to follow those guys, and it worked pretty well.
That sounds pretty sensible. And the other kind of, I guess we've alluded to a little bit, but the first, like, you do your training, and then you think you've got the hang of it, and then the next day, it's kind of start, and you're out the hotel, out kind of grounds of the hotel to make your way to kind of the first leg. What was your like first? Do you have any memory of the first experience of like leaving the hotel? Yeah,
I mean, I think it was basically sort of sheer terror. Like I think I was pretty sure that we voted Matt to drive. I was like, you're the oldest, you're the most responsible. You've got I mean, I was in my early 20s, and I don't know, he was, I don't know. But yeah, it was, yeah, I made him drive. He was pretty nervous as well. And I remember just getting to the road, coming out of the hotel, down the driveway and getting to the road. And I think it was a right turn, which meant you had to sort of cross both lanes of traffic from memory. And that in itself was just like, God, like, you know, because the driving there, you know, and there's something about the driving there too that initially it's terrifying because everything's flying around and there's no semblance of rules or order or anything. So that initial thing was quite terrifying. But as you actually get into the driving, you realize that everyone is sort of hyper aware of what's going on. So like people will be very close to you, but it's because they know exactly how much space they have to get around you. You know, it's almost like they're much better drivers than we are in so many ways because they don't need rules and it just sort of works more or less. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, but there's sort of there's an order to the chaos that you sort of learn as you go on. But I mean, we didn't really get the feel for that until a few days in. So that first day was, pretty terrifying. And we had to go to that fish market. Fish market. God, that was fun.
Yeah. That's. I mean, anybody that's ever been to Sri Lanka or even India, actually, I mean, they'll know the buses are the number one. There's a hierarchy of like the rules. The roads are ruled by the hierarchy of size, and obviously right at the top of the food chain are the buses, and they are terrifying. And there's all sorts of like they're sometimes on pretty strict timetables, and then they drive really recklessly. And I mean, so I think I have looked at the stats a couple of times, but like the road accidents, the amount caused by buses there are pretty bad.
I mean, I remember vividly, you're passed by a bus so closely that you can, feel the exhaust on your foot as it goes past. Like the warm air from the exhaust, like just warms your foot as it goes past. It's that, like it's that close. Like, and you're in this little thing. But yeah, you just sort of have to, you've got to trust it.
And I think one of the reasons why I mean, we've touched wood have never had a major road incident. Thank God for that. But one of the reasons is because also the tuk-tuks they're pretty slow going vehicles. So which means you can kind of get out the way, you can avoid things. You're not recklessly speeding. I mean, that's happened. I remember the first one we ever did in Sri Lanka. It was like I was also young and kind of naive and events and gung ho, and it was like we had set it up as a race, and that was just ridiculous. So it was racing tuk-tuks. Very quickly, halfway through the challenge, kind of got modified to, guys, it's not a race. And as you probably
maybe let's not race. Yeah, the amazing race format is, I think, a lot more. It's the right balance of adventure and like preserving people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
you go.
I was going to say that, like, do you remember any of the challenges that we had set? Because it's a kind of, we obviously have a challenge format where teams kind of participate against other teams if they want to get points in a format that they then can actually win a pretty cool prize. I mean, we've actually had in Sri Lanka, the first prize has been return tickets on Sri Lankan Airlines to come back to Sri Lanka, within a year. But I've always had mixed feelings about it, myself, because, it can be, I guess, a little bit silly sometimes, but as in the perception, but the challenges themselves, I found like a lot of people at the beginning would be like, oh, I'm not going to participate in the challenges. Like, I'm just here for the adventure and just, and then 99% of people like participate and love it because, obviously it's human nature to be competitive and to want to win. And people just dive straight in when they find out, what the challenges are. Do you remember that kind of aspect of the event, of the rally?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for us, the challenges was sort of secondary. Like the idea of driving a tuk-tuk around this country we've never been to was like, let's just go and do that, and it will be awesome. And getting there, I think pretty early on, we made a decision because also you kind of get a read on the group, and you can see like, these guys are hyper competitive, and I can't be bothered dealing with that. So I think my brother and I are probably relatively similar in we want to be involved, but not to a point where it puts like too much strain on us physically or mentally. So we were like, we'll do some challenges, but we're not really invested in the points, whether or not we win or lose. Like, we'll just see how we go. But yeah, like you say, pretty early on, you do get into it a bit, and some of the challenges, the way you guys design them is obviously to encourage. It's almost like your that sense of kind of discovery and like happenstance and those great things that happen in travel. The way the challenges are designed encourage those things, but they don't force them. You know how like if you go on like a group tour or whatever, you might go and you visit somebody's house and they show you this thing or whatever, but it's all scripted. They do the same thing like 10 times a day, right? Like, it feels nice, but it's a scripted kind of event. Whereas the way that you organize your challenges and stuff, it's all natural. Like, I think one of them was you have to buy a bag of food and get yourself invited to somebody's house for lunch to like cook it for you, and that's like amazing. And I think we sort of half-assed that, and I think we had some food, and then we were driving down the road and we saw another team already like in someone's garden, so we just went and tagged along, and like we all had a meal together. So that was a good one. I remember there was one where we had to go to a market and buy a bunch of stuff. Like, we could buy anything we want, but then we had to go onto a local bus and sell as much of it as we could to everybody on the bus, and whoever made the most money won, which was pretty fun. And we're all trying to figure out what are people going to need on a long haul bus ride in Sri Lanka, like pens, pencils, snacks. So we're just I don't even remember where we were when most of this stuff is going on, because what's interesting is like the sort of location doesn't matter so much, because you're just in it and you're having fun and you're engaging with things. So whether you're in like a big tourist area or not, it doesn't matter, because you're just having like a blast. And that bus thing is a prime example. I have no idea where we did that or where that market was. I couldn't point to it on a map. But that whole experience of and I'm not the sort of person that does well with like talking to strangers and that kind of thing. So it definitely gets you out of your comfort zone. And
I mean, that's how you've hit it. You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, that is exactly why we've got those in there. It's they're optional, so people really don't feel they want to. They don't have to, obviously. B, it does get them out of the comfort zone, because when they're competing against other people, they're like, oh, maybe I can do this, and they see someone else do it. And then, it encourages you to learn more about the destination, to kind of like jump into the deep end of like, we do them like they're food based, language based, culture, culture based. It's like looking at religion or some of the old like amazing sites and stuff. But yeah, that's exactly why we do them. And also, like what you said there about not knowing where you are. Yeah, the routes. I mean, I think at the time we only had actually one route that we used to swap between, like north, south, and central, kind of like throughout Sri Lanka. And it doesn't really matter which one you do, because you're absolutely right. You go through so many little villages and towns and areas that you would never normally go as a normal tourist, because
well, the best encapsulation of that for me is, I think, Sigiriya, right? And there's another rock that's like opposite Sigiriya, which is is it Dambula? Is it, or is it a different? What's that one called?
The other rock.
Pirarangala, yeah. So everybody goes to Sigiriya. Everybody goes to Lions Rock. It's the place. There's a big rock all the tourists go there to look at this rock, whatever. And we would go to Pirarangala. Never heard of it. Whatever, get there, and there's this awesome climb up this rock, and there's sort of nobody there except us, really. We had to climb up this rock, and I think we had to like find a special flower and take a picture of it or something like that. I can't remember. But then from the top of Pirarangala, if my memory serves me correctly, you get this awesome view of Sigiriya, right?
Yeah.
Is that right, or am I imagining that?
Yeah, so, no, that's exactly right. I mean, obviously people like that. Unfortunately, that, you know, bear in mind you were there. I think 2011 and 2012. So kind of just as Sri Lanka was really going through a post-war like tourism boom, like big time. You know, that probably those were its fastest growing years since the war ended in 2009. And at the time, you know, there was nobody there on those, you know, there was obviously the backpackers and your odd, you know, independent like travelers and stuff. But now that's turned into, unfortunately, with Instagram and stuff, it's turned into kind of like, you know, you get a couple of big influencers or Instagrammers who just go and, you know, they post a couple of pictures and very soon that just becomes the place to go. So now that's actually what you're saying right now is quite a common thing.
It's no longer true. Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's more the philosophy, you know, of what you guys were trying to, you know, absolutely make happen with that. We're going to go to this place. It's not the popular place, but you're going to get a great view of the popular place, and there's not really going to be anybody there. So yeah, that was cool. I think we got a speeding fine on the way there. Which may have paid a small fee to get let off along the way.
We'll delete that from the podcast.
Yeah, don't want to incriminate anyone.
No, it's all part of the adventure. You know, if you can negotiate yourself out of a pretty shitty situation, then you know there's
couple bribes go a long way.
Yeah, and then what about? Like I think back in the day, well, then it was, I mean, it still is about a 10-day trip. The other part, like, are you still in touch with any of the people that you did it with? I mean, I'm obviously have had the privilege of like meeting, and it's one of the best bits of my job is just meeting cool, like-minded people from all over the world. And then, you know, keeping in touch with them and basically becoming friends from a short kind of intense interaction of like great adventure. And are you in touch with any people that you did it back in, well, this is almost 10 years ago now?
Yeah, I mean, yourself, obviously, we talk semi-regularly about a range of things. My brother, more or less, we stay in touch. And then, like a few people, like I don't talk to them heaps, but you know, like we kept in touch with Matt and Fish from the Lanka Challenge, and then we did the Philippines Challenge with them as well. So, you know, there's definitely people that we're in touch with, and if we're ever in the same neck of the woods, we, you know, look each other up, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that tends to be the case. I mean, I know there's like some groups that, you know, because of just where they live and they naturally were able to keep in touch and have done so since. But obviously, when you kind of come from Australia, America, UK, Europe, meet in Sri Lanka, obviously the opportunity to see each other afterwards isn't that great. And naturally, over time, things just tend to, you know, keep in touch. And if I'm ever there, maybe meet up.
I think like the nature of the trip and it's such an intense experience. Like every day is like two weeks sort of, or a week doing anything else, whatever. So the people that are doing it with you, you do create these pretty strong bonds. So if I saw anybody in the street, there'd just be so many stories to share and think about and laugh about, like, you know, 100%. More so than any other trip I've done. Like I've traveled to a lot of places, met a lot of awesome people, but that particular Lanka Challenge, like as like my first kind of, almost my first foray into that kind of travel, definitely set the bar pretty high for sure.
And you mentioned, obviously I know this, but you probably do know, you were one of the first, you were the first participants also on the Philippine Sailing Challenge. It's you know, it's an event that we did twice, and it's such an awesome adventure. But like we've always struggled a little bit to like, because we've only got like one date, so we've always struggled a little bit. I don't know if I'm making excuses for just some pretty crappy marketing or whatever, but we've always struggled to get the interest on that, even though it's you know, it's, I mean, the Philippines as well is just an amazing destination.
Yeah.
What were your, and you said you came with, I remember Matt and Fish who came on that too as a team. What were your memories of like sailing and being on that trip?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I don't know, having done the Lanka challenge and knowing sort of what you guys were about and what you do, I think we were more keen to do that versus like a Cambo challenge, which you thought would be awesome as well. But sort of we did a tuk-tuk thing. The sailing thing sounds pretty interesting, and also like going to somewhere like the Philippines, you know, beautiful beaches and that kind of thing. But yeah, getting into it, it was we didn't really know what to expect again, and I think different to the Lanka challenge, that one was a lot more for us about just the local crew we were with and sort of being a part of, you know, because they're these Paraus, yeah, that's how you pronounce it, Paraus. Yeah. So these boats are like their working boats, so the boats they use year in, year out for their work, right? And so we're obviously not just going to rock up and like sail them. So they're kind of we're sailing with them, and they're taking us around places, and we're spending, you know, staying at their homes and doing all the stuff. And for me, that was just awesome. You know, Jeffrey Bong Bong and Captain Mike, they were our crew. And,
we had without a doubt. I mean, just that kind of free-spirited, like sea, you know, sailor, boat owner. You really kind of get that firsthand experience of like a brief moment of living like that way of life, which is kind of so day to day, but you know, there's something about it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, just
learning about them too, and like you make sort of genuine, you know, friendships with them. They're not just they didn't feel like our guides for the week. They were guys, and because it was the first one, they were as much on this as we were. You know, they were figuring it out, and they were interested about us and what we did, and you know, there was a lot of like I think mutual kind of exchange of, you know, just all sorts of stuff. So it was really cool to be a part of that.
It was like the sharing of culture. You know, it was, I think we had, so Matt and Fish were South African, you guys Australia, UK, we had a couple of other Brits on that one, and maybe some Europeans. It was like to get on the boat for the first time. And we were really lucky with the weather as well. It was just perfect conditions for a lot of that.
Except the last sail back to Boracay, when we lost our emergency radio as well, which we didn't. I think we realised just before we pushed off that we'd lost our emergency radio. Also didn't have. You might want to cut this as well, but also didn't have our life jackets. And I don't know how bad the conditions were, but they felt pretty bad. And I know that one of the boats got in trouble, so the rescue boat was already with this other boat. So me and my brother were like, well, if anything goes wrong now, we don't have life jackets, and we don't have a radio, an emergency radio, and the boats were pitching almost vertical as well, because that's kind of what they're made to do, right? They're made to. So that was a pretty. We had a couple of runs when we got home that afternoon.
That was a pretty sketchy afternoon. I remember that clearly because I was on the rescue boat when the first one had a mast issue, and the mast.
I think the mast broke, didn't it?
The mast broke. Yeah, the mast broke.
A mast issue is to.
And then, hey, and I think I remember towing them in, and then actually coming to get you guys and tow you in. Is that right?
I can't remember if we got towed. I feel like we might have done. There was a long period where we felt very, very much like on our own, which was our own doing because we couldn't call anyone anyway.
Because you didn't have the radio. Yeah.
but look, man, it was your first year of doing it. We're idiots. These things happen. Everyone's okay, and it was a great story to tell. So.
Pretty good fun. I mean, I've grown up sailing and stuff, and yeah, I love it. I'm actually hoping to chat to a girl, Mia. I hope I said that right. Who basically did the Lanka Challenge maybe a few years after you, and then basically has spent the last 3 years sailing around the world. They bought a boat. I can't remember where. Probably in.
Oh yeah, she was on our Lanka Challenge.
Was she really?
Yeah. I remember because we're friends on Facebook, and I saw that sailing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
She looks like she's been doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, what a life. I mean, like three years almost non-stop sailing around the world. I think their boat is she's just come back to, I think, Denmark, but is got a short-term job. I think it's because actually their boat is in French Polynesia, and there's really strict COVID restrictions there, so they're not really allowed. As much as they were there, they can't really travel. So they've come back to kind of hunker down and wait for COVID to kind of blow over. And then they're going straight back out there. So,
yeah.
I'm hoping to, well, she said that she's keen to come on, and I really look forward to chatting to her about those adventures, and maybe even blagging myself onto a crew member's position for a little bit if I have the time.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. Anyway, well, man, it's like I know you haven't got too much time. Like, thanks loads for sharing your adventures. Hopefully, like we can. Well, we'll hopefully see you soon in Australia.
Yeah, when you guys get over here, that.
Have you got any other trips? Like, I know it sounds like a ridiculous question, but obviously Australia, you guys are blessed to have such great kind of outdoors and a huge country, and I think you'll probably, if there's any opportunity to have travel, are you allowed to travel to New Zealand?
Not yet, no. It's sort of been on the agenda for a little while, but because my partner's from New Zealand, obviously, so we're kind of like pretty keen to get over there and see the family and stuff.
So you haven't been able to do that?
No, I think you can technically do it, but you've got to pay for your own quarantine, which is like ends up being sort of, you know, you're going 3 hours over the ocean, and then you've got to spend 2 weeks in a hotel that's going to cost you about $3,000. So it's like it's pretty untenable at the moment. So yeah, we're just waiting for that to ease up, which is hopefully soon. No, I went to Tasmania in January for some work with Adventure.com, which was really cool, which was a nice little adventure fix. Tasmania is an amazing place. You definitely have to go there when you get over here. Nothing else really on the agenda, like travel wise. But yeah, like you say, now things are open. We got the kids, like my 3-year-old Finn. She's just getting to an age where she's kind of getting really fun to do stuff with. So we want to do some camping and that kind of stuff. But yeah, keep it pretty local. You're right, Australia is a sort of amazing place. There's, you know, the difference between Queensland and Victoria is just like unbelievable. And then the Northern Territory, and it's like so many different countries in one, and all the indigenous sort of history and stuff there is to learn and get to grips with on that front as well. It's just like, it's amazing. It's this whole kind of thing waiting to be explored. So it's all exciting stuff. Yeah,
I really can't wait to discover Australia more and visit all those places. I mean, I've only been to Australia once back in ages ago, and I was only there for 10 days, and I went for a friend's wedding in Brisbane, had been in Sydney to see a couple of friends, actually from the Lanka Challenge again. And that was it. So I can't wait. What's your kind of go-to? Do you do lots of like road trip stuff and then campsites, or do you like, what do you normally do?
Yeah, like there's lots of good road trips around Victoria. Great Ocean Road's a big one. I've done that so many times because whenever somebody comes to visit me from the UK, they're like, "I want to do the Great Ocean Road," and I'm like, "Great, okay, let's go again." I recently did it in a Tesla a few weeks ago for a story for the Guardian, which was pretty fun. But Great Ocean Road's a good one. you can go the other way down towards Wilson's Promontory, which is a lovely part of the world. There's just heaps. Like once you get out of Melbourne, you can sort of go in any direction, and there's just so much amazing stuff. But yeah, I would love to get on a plane and take the kids. Like when you get here, you've got to go to. I would highly recommend going to Uluru as your first kind of big trip in the Red Centre. For me, coming from the UK, I wish I had gone earlier in my sort of like arriving here, because getting a bit of a handle and an education on that Indigenous side of things and the Indigenous history just gives you a whole new layer of like what Australia is, which is really important, particularly for me as like an Englishman. Like that's sort of like, it's very much my history as well as like everything that's happened here. So and we weren't taught heaps about that at school, and they're not even taught heaps about it here. So and it, like, it's an amazing place to visit. Uluru should definitely be top of the list, I reckon.
Well, maybe I'll
come with you
on another road trip then. When I'm there.
Yeah, well, it's a long drive from here. I don't know how many hours, but it's a fair way up to Northern Territory. But I'll be keen. Maybe ship a tuk-tuk over and we'll do that.
Yeah, maybe that's an idea. We'll do a if Australia will allow tuk-tuks, who knows? I mean, we'll do a Australian tuk-tuk rally maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great. Motorbike, scooters, we've got to make something work. I will say, the Lanka Challenge did give me confidence. Every time I've been to Southeast Asia, I'm always trying to hire scooters and motorbikes and do all that kind of stuff. So the Lanka Challenge definitely instilled in me an appreciation and love of weird little vehicles and things. So
it's funny. I get, obviously, with the network of participants that I've obviously met over the years, I get random photographs from people like, they could be even in an airport if there's like a tuk-tuk stand, just selling some stupid chocolates or something. I'll get a photo and say, "Hey, thinking of you." And it's kind of like I managed to morph myself into some sort of tuk-tuk obsessed person.
Yeah,
but
it's good. I mean, it's a great way to just see stuff like tuk-tuk, scooter, motorbike, like just that. When you really feel like you're part of the thing more so than when you're in a car. I remember the Lanka Challenge, driving the tuk-tuk and seeing this massive tourist bus go past us, and all of these people just looking out the window at me and my brother, like, just their faces was just like, it was just amazing. I was like, this is it, I'm in the right spot. And like, I went to Laos with a friend of mine a few years ago, and in my head I wanted to try and do our own little Lanka Challenge. I was like, we'll rent motorbikes here and we're going to drive them over here and we're going to do this thing. And we had no plan, and it was going to be this great adventure. But neither of us knew how to ride motorbikes. And the woman, a few places in Lang Prabang, they wouldn't hire them to us because they were not confident in our driving skill. So they got.
Yeah,
Laos.
Laos is an amazing country. I mean, when we did the first few Cambo challenges in Cambodia on those old, they called remorque, the auto remorque, it's basically a tuk-tuk. It's called a tuk-tuk, but it's like a really shitty scooter that pulls a carriage.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
Yeah, so you might have seen it. So after the first couple of those, I was kind of exploring Laos as a destination, and I drove across Laos, up the middle and a few zigzags all the way from the Cambodian border on the south, kind of like just meandering along the Mekong all the way up almost, with scooters, kind of wrecking and stuff. And Laos for me, it's one of my favorite countries. I mean, not that I like picking countries, but it was just beautiful. Like it's kind of like sandwiched between, Vietnam, Cambodia, and then obviously you've got Burma and Myanmar up above, and Thailand, who all have pretty, dense populations. Like Vietnam's got something like 80 million, maybe even more. Thailand the same, and then Laos is kind of there with like 7 million people. I loved
like
it.
Kind of like the New Zealand of Southeast Asia. Definitely had that vibe.
Yeah.
It was very sleepy, very very quiet.
Exactly. Yeah,
felt very even though obviously there's tourism there and there's an infrastructure for it. Like it did feel sort of frontierish. I know people have been going there for a very long time, but compared to most other places in the world you can go, particularly in that region, it definitely had a
even in areas that they were, where they obviously had tourists been going there for years and years and years, but even in those areas, like where there had been, you knew there was consistently had been backpackers for ages. You didn't.
Yeah.
I always felt that they were, the local guys were just like whatever. Like they weren't. They never really would be kind of that like obsessive or would try and sell you stuff. You're like, you want to buy that? Buy it if you want. There was no like maybe if it's changed now, but Laos was Laos. I mean, actually, the Mekong is just in general has got this sort of like magical, like if you're anywhere along the Mekong, I just always felt like it's just got this weird kind of superpower over you. It's kind of like being in the ocean or something, like you just have this calmness and love it.
Totally
cool, Ollie. Well, man, really nice for you to take the time. Awesome chatting. We haven't had a chat like this for ages. So
years. No, it's good. I feel like there's just so much more we could talk about. It's we'll have to do another one. You have to go through like 20, 30 people, and then I'll come on again, and we'll talk about when my brother got food poisoning on the Lanka challenge and had to take 10 Imodium before we went out every day.
There's a lot of
there's so much. I think one of the best meals of my life I had on the Lanka challenge, that dal we had when we were camping, and the guys, we were all really hungover, and the guys made this dal the next morning and this fresh roti. To this day, best breakfast I've ever had. So much more to talk about. Good stuff. Can't wait to get back on another one at some point, wherever in the world it will be. It'll be good to get out there again for sure.
Yeah, well, you should come on another trip. I know maybe when the kids are a bit older or whatever. But hopefully we'll be there waiting.
It'd be good to get a babysitter for like 2 weeks, and then I can come with my partner Jenna as well. That'd be fun.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Maybe we should launch like a babysitting service.
A large minority crash. That's a good side hustle. That's a perfect side hustle.
Fully tailored babysitting service.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the idea, I'm hoping to, like chat to people like you, get some of our friends from like, who are actually in Sri Lanka, in India. We're going to launch something in Pakistan, and just get speaking to them as well, just to get like the local perspective of kind of events and the impact that
you should, because it's such a they're as much a part of it as we are. Like I remember we made such good friends with like the mechanics and like the guys that were coming around and helping us, and that guy like, because they were shooting like a TV show the year we did it for like local TV, remember? And there was that guy Kevin that was always on our tail with like a massive.
He's now
Kevin on the show,
radio star or something, isn't he?
I'm not surprised, man. That guy had some charisma.
He's on the radio in Sri Lanka. He run. I don't know if he's got like his own show or something. Nice. Now and again from that TV show. Cool. All right, Ollie. Well, awesome.
Thanks,
awesome chatting. And we will speak again soon.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, buddy. Have a good day in London town, and I look forward to catching up.
Cheers, man.
See you, dude. Bye.